Hello everyone, this is CounterYolo, bringing you another video talking about Star Trek Online. Hopefully you all are enjoying the holidays right now, but as promised, today I'm going to go over my Vengeance tank build that has been asked by several dozen of you all over the past few months. So I'll go ahead and get started with the stats and then get into my stuff inside of this build. So first off, the Kelvin Timeline Dreadnought Cruiser is a pretty nice ship. It's got a 5-3 layout with a decent hull, very good shield ratio as well, and it also has 4 tactical consoles. It also has a Lieutenant Commander Universal slot, so you can actually make that a science and have gravity well on this ship. So it is pretty nice. It's got Dreadnought Cruiser commands, which means it's going to have weapon system efficiency and command distract fire. And those are the two most chosen cruiser commands for DPS and tank players respectively. Which means it also has one hangar bay. And this is a unique ship in that it can also load dual heavy cannons on it. So it can really optimally use its 5-3 weapon layout, which is something that a lot of your DPS captains really like inside the game. It used to be much more of a novelty thing than it is today, but it is still something that is really nice about this ship. When it comes to the traits for the captain that I'm using on this, this is on Kavetta Fury, my captain, who is a TOS themed captain typically. She's a tactical captain. Especially for tactical captains, you really want the trait A Good Day to Die off of the exchange, because it makes your go down fighting ability very useful. Normally this is an ability that you can only use if you're below 50% hull integrity. It gives you a substantial damage boost, plus 50% bonus all damage when it's at rank 3. Basically, this ranks up as you get more levels inside the game, and also a tiny bit amount of damage resistance rating. However, if you have this trait, you can use this at any time in the fight, or just spam it. And if you just spam it, then this is up a third of the time. So a third of the time in your fights as a tactical captain, you're going to have an additional 50% bonus all damage if you have this trait. For tanks inside the game, if you're a tactical captain, I'd also highly recommend getting Last Ditch Effort, so that basically a third of the time you have an additional 60 all damage resistance rating instead of just 20. This basically also means that you don't necessarily have to completely fill out the damage resistance ratings part of the of your skill tree if you rely on a lot of this and some of your other abilities to supplement that loss that you're getting there. Alongside that, I like to use a couple of other stuff off of the exchange. Fluid Cocoon gives me a lot of extra energy damage as I'm getting hit, which as a tank you're ideally going to be hit a lot. Zero Command Codes is an almost must-have for PvP, but for this build, it just gives me some additional resist to a lot of those controls, and then some additional extra healing as I'm getting hit and being controlled by a lot of enemies inside the game. Techie is a pretty nice one too. It is typically available to most captains. I think there's probably a few that can't get Techie, but most captains can. Give Your All is a situational one, but it's one that I like to have, simply because I like to use a lot of engineering bridge officer abilities. And it gives me an additional 20% dodge chance in space. This is like one of the few places that you can actually get dodge chance in space. Most often it's just defense, but this is also something unique that you can have in space. It's from R&D engineering at level 15 of that. R&D and engineering gives you a lot of R&D in the game. It gives you a lot of different traits that you can use, although some are more good than others. And Spatial Layer is another one off of the exchange. This used to be one of the best ones in the game. Then they added a bunch more traits, and this became kind of okay. Warp Theorist is another one that's available to most captains to give you some additional warp core potential and EPS flow, which gives you a little bit more DPS. It's kind of minor, but it's still there. Additional defense from the elusive trait, which is available on basically everyone, to my understanding, gives you some more defense, which is really nice. For my starship traits, this is where we're going to get into stuff that most of you probably can't get. So History Remembers and Shield Overload and Emergency Weapon Cycle are all from the C-Store. So those ones, as long as you're willing to buy that C-Store ship, you can access those easily. Because this is my TOS captain who has a TOS tier 6 starship. She has the trait built to last, which is exceptionally good for power cost reduction. In my particular build, I'm actually not going to be using anything that lowers power cost in any of my consoles or in my space set. And so in order to have my general rule of having 2 traits with power cost reduction, I actually had to use both of these guys for weapon power cost reduction stuff so that I could be able to have this build the way that I wanted it for the Vengeance class. Honor Dead, because we're talking about the Vengeance and the Kelvin Timeline ship cannot be accessed by the KDF. They have a different ship which isn't as good, but well, I guess it's technically good for some PvP situations. But Honor Dead is one that you can get off the exchange, which combined with all this stuff just makes on the ship even harder to kill. For traits, so some of the things that are new in here. One of y'all mentioned in a comment that enhanced running shots was really good for critical chance, and so I decided to try it out because I don't know everything. I decided to try it out, and this thing is substantial. This is super substantial. In almost all my other suggestions for like traits, in which I suggested getting precision, I would say this is much better than precision now, especially for most of y'all that are tanks in the game, just because most of us aren't going to have a ton of critical chance inside the game, which means being able to get increasingly higher crit chance as we don't get critical hits. That is very valuable. That's very valuable. I highly recommend getting that combined with automated perimeter conduits and advanced targeting systems. This guy doesn't have the reputation trait from the Dyson reputation, which gives you scaling damage resistance rating as your hull gets lower, just because we are a tactical captain and we have access to get a die and last ditch effort, which is basically going to give you a lot of similar things that trait would actually be able to give you, but this is basically on a third of the time anyway. So that trait isn't quite as useful for tactical captains as engineers and science captains would, but you could still put that on the ship if you so desire. For duty officers, as some of you may know, I don't care about duty officers besides science, just because for science needs a lot of duty officers for their stuff to work. Energy builds really don't need them too much unless you do Aux to Bat. So for this, I just have 3 Adaku Bridge duty officers, and that's basically it. For my specializations, I have Miracle Worker Primary with Command Secondary, not because necessarily that some of the other specializations aren't better. It's just that I like to do random TFOs on basically all of my captains, and I like to have specializations which are good in space and on the ground. If you use stuff like, for instance, the popular Secondary Strategist, it's really good for both cooldowns and for that clicky taunt ability, but it does you no good on ground random TFOs. So I like to have stuff that's good for both. Miracle Worker Command is a very strong one for that stuff in both space and ground. Here's some just raw comparisons and stats. If you actually look at the stats between the Temporal Light Cruiser, which I like to use, versus the Kelvin Timeline Dreadnought, you're actually going to notice that the hull is fairly close, actually. I'm just pointing that out just because a lot of our hull ratios that got really wonky and messed up after Victory's Life and the raise to 65 cap, in that a lot of the text for a lot of our older starships were not updated for the changes in the hull ratios. This is one of the biggest things that I am a little bit upset about in the recent Victory's Life expansion, as I've started to look into a lot more of the data, is that the ratios are wrong on almost all the ships. I'd really like to just find out what the ratios are really supposed to be, like what the base ship was supposed to be for the comparisons, so that I could start comparing between lost ships and make my own list again for comparisons in terms of the ratios. But for now, I'm basically just going to be using everything that's listed on the STO wiki, even though a lot of that is inaccurate and wrong. For a lot of the starship comparisons, that's the source that I'm using. Here's the skill tree that I'm using for this captain. I haven't changed it from what it was for my Temporal Light Cruiser. which is a very, very aggressive type of build. Just because I don't have the 2 points in damage resistance rating here that I normally would have on any other captain because of go down fighting being up a third of the time anyway. But anyway, for the tooth engineering ones, I like battery expertise and subsystem repair. I feel that that's fairly valuable to have for tanks because those are fairly nice to have. For science, a lot of this doesn't matter too much. This is kind of take your pick. With transwarp going to no cost recently, sector speed's a little bit more valuable than transwarp now. I haven't updated this. I would have to do a respec, and I'm just too lazy to do that right now. Because this isn't a PvP build, max shield capacity and control resistance is just going to be better for you and more useful. As for the 4 ones for tactical, threat control is obviously the must-have for tanks. You're not going to use projectiles, so this actually doesn't matter. Critical chance is more valuable than crit severity for in general for energy weapons, and then this is also a take your pick here as well. When it comes to my space set itself, I'm actually using something a little bit different. I'm using the colony deflector and colony engines for a little bit better survival, especially because at 100% impulse, you get an additional 15% shield resistance from the colony engines. That is pretty nice. The shield and the warp core give you a hot restart on your weapons and your shields, which is pretty nice. There is a set 2 bonus with having both of these combined, that you get some additional shield regen whenever you use distribute shields. Since I use those constantly, that is a nice little bump, but these individually are all really, really nice. I obviously still use command track fire because that's the ability to use. For my weapons themselves, I'm not going to be using a separate slide because I'm just using 8 Kelvin timeline phasers. I haven't re-rolled these at all. Technically better. There are better mods out there. I've covered the better stuff in different videos. A lot of the DPS captains have also covered a lot of the different mods that are better. Also on the SD Red page can also give you more details as to the different ones there, as to ones you probably should be using. I'm using the Kelvin Starship. I felt that it was appropriate just to use a lot of Kelvin timeline weapons for it. If you want to pay more attention to what I'll recommend for a lot of those different things, really pay attention to the video next week. That's going to be super long on Thursday. For my consoles themselves, because we're using Vengeance, the DPRM console is really, really expensive. Just as an FYI, if you buy this ship but you can't afford to get the ship with the DPRM console along with it, just get the second pack off the exchange that has the secondary shield projector along with it. Just so you can get an additional 33% phaser damage for your starship, and then just get another console that has damage resistance rating on it instead, like Trail and Deplating. Firmware field projector is super nice. There is shared process and integration on the exchange if you don't have access to the Lucaria console itself. Shared process integration is similar, but a little bit weaker than this guy. Taco Connect Converter and binaural spheres and circuits are off of the lobby store, which gives you a lot of critical chance and critical severity between these two guys. They're not needed, but they're really nice to have as well. And then for the remaining consoles, 4 vulnerability locators. I've been too lazy to upgrade this to Epic. I just don't feel the value to have that a little bit higher, but that's just me. Assembly module is also pretty nice as well from your reputation. Domino is pretty nice to have for phasers, just as an FYI. This is from the Bajoran craft from the anniversary event last year, I think it was, or the year before. One of those anniversary events, we got the Bajoran Interceptor with the Domino. If you don't have this, just get the Universal Phaser console off of that one mission. I'll give you the exact mission as to what it is next week if you're too lazy to find it yourself or you haven't gotten that build yet. I don't care about hanger pets, but this is the hanger pet that I'm using because it's just what comes with the ship. Yes, advanced of almost anything, it's going to be better than this guy, but I don't care about hanger pets, so That's just what it is. In terms of your bridge officer seats for this particular ship, if you don't want to use any of the specialist seating, I think that would be not smart, but you technically could go that way. And if you're using the type of things that I suggest for generalist tanking, this is the way that you can definitely go. For your command engineering intel, just having straight engineering bridge officers there. With engineering team, Marines power to shields, Marines power to weapons, and reverse your polarity. It's all pretty nice. For your lieutenant commander tactical, just have tackle team, attack power and beta, and beam fire well. And then for your lieutenant commander universal, since you want a control ability as a tank captain, ideally, you'll make this a science to get gravity well. Then you'll have hazard management, transfer shield strength there as well to help with hull and shield healing. For your extra science ability, science team 1 is pretty nice. And for your lieutenant universal temper operative, just another tactical there with tactical team and attack pattern beta, just to help with the Adaku bridge officers. If you don't have a Adaku, then replacing attack pattern beta here with another beam fire will too. It's going to help you out substantially as well. Now for the super offensive, and the reason why I have my space set the way it was is if you want to use this setup. I don't like Ox to Bat, so I'm not going to be using that in this build. A lot of your really high-end DPS guys will prefer to have Ox to Bat with this ship and make the lieutenant commander or the lieutenant an engineering slot for it, so they can afford to have Ox to Bat with a lot of the offensive like overrides of system safeties, which honestly a lot of your DPS guys they like the intel specialization for override subsystem safeties. It's a very powerful bridge officer ability, but you have the problem of that you have a random subsystem that will go offline for 5 seconds once it ends. That's why in this build I have the Iconian Warp Core and Iconian Shield, so that if I get the random slot for it that it actually takes off my weapons or takes out my shields, they're immediately it's immediately fixed. So you can use that, or you can use like your Marines power of weapons, Marines power of shields to help counteract those if they go offline and you happen to have those up. I use Ionic Turbulence 3 because it's sort of like a Gravity Well. It's not as good as Gravity Well, but it's a decent enough substitute for not having a Lieutenant Commander Nurse Science for Gravity Well 1. For my Lieutenant Universal Temper Operative, I'm having Temper Operative stuff here just because I am losing a lot of my whole healing off of my Lieutenant Commander Science stuff over here. And so having Causer version 1 gives me another whole heal. It's not as good as what it could be if I had a full Temper Operative setup, but it still is a decent whole heal overall. Chronometric Conversion Field 1 reduces all of the damage from a particular enemy, which is pretty nice, especially as a tactical captain, in which what you can do is that you can basically have this like that science ability that a lot of science captains get. Then I finish Shield Strength 1 so that I have another shield heal inside of this whole thing. I've Ox Structural Integrity Field 1 in here just so that I can be 100% sure that I can have my my build to last tray constantly up, so that I can choose when I really want to use engineering team causal reversion in my actual battle situations. So yeah, that's basically it for the bridge officer stuff itself. There's obviously different other better builds that you can use, but that's totally up to you. When it comes to the Vengeance Breakdown itself, it is a very, very good DPS cruiser. And actually, like whenever you look at the exchange, the two starships that are most oftenly like the cheapest for tier 6 starships now is the tier 6 Walker class light exploration cruiser and this ship, like Hell Time on the Intel Dreadnought cruiser, which are both solid tank ships in the game right now. DPS captains really like this ship because it's a 5-3 ship with dual heavy cannons that has weapon system efficiency, and it has a decent hull HP, so that they can go a little bit more offensive and have fun with it. And It's got a decent bridge layout too. A lot of your starships nowadays at tier 6, because you get specialist seating with those, a lot of DPS captains like to look and see what the specialist seating happens to be for it. It's still a decent tank cruiser as well. It's a 5-3 ship with 4 tactical consoles with command track fire, so you can either do a broadsiding or a forward firing option for the starship. In this theme build of Kelvin Timeline, it's just going to be a broadsiding build, but that's totally up to you if you wanted to do a different phaser build with forward firing. It's got a really good bridge option layout and high hull HP as well. The big downsides for this is the ship profile, which I covered on Sunday, which you can see that video if you so choose, as well as the turning and inertia that basically all Dreadnought cruisers have inside the game. Before the Vabar Miracle Worker Juggernaut came out, this was one of the starships that had the best damage tables in the game typically because of its bridge option layout. You typically had to go away from cruisers entirely in order to beat the Vengeance in terms of your DPS like channels and records and stuff. And most of the time it was the C-Store, the Romulan starships from Star Trek Nemesis were the ones that are most popularly really good at DPS. But this ship is still a very good contender for DPS, and it's still a decent tank as well. Despite the fact that, I mean, especially for DPS, basically the Vabar Juggernaut is the best one for DPS right now. This is still a very solid starship. Yeah, this is what I'm using right now. It's between this and my TOS cruiser are the ones that I like to use for this particular character. And the layouts I like to use for him. Hopefully y'all found this enjoyable. As said earlier in the video, next Thursday I'm going to be going over all of the budget builds for each energy type with my own rules behind the budget builds, so that it makes sense to all of you. Which my version of budget builds for next week's video is going to be quite a bit different than basically any other captain in the game, so that you all can get some nice cool ideas to go along with it. But anyway, thank you all for watching. Yeah, I believe this is going to be my last video for 2018. So yeah, I will see you all on the 1st. And we'll give you some lowdowns as to what's going to be happening in 2019 for this channel. Thank you all for watching, and enjoy the rest of the year.